basically. They are not completely, engulfed in work without thinking about, having a break or slowing down a little bit. So that is one of the very important points that I want us to note. That when we say that somebody is type B, it does not mean that the person is lazy or the person doesn't want to do anything. What it means rather is that this person knows how to balance his or her time well. Even though they work very hard, they also can play very hard. So that is the key thing that I want you to be aware of. We are going to look at some stress issues that these same researchers came up with. So basically what they are saying is that if we push ourselves and we do all the things that we have to do, eventually we do go through some health-related difficulties. And the truth is that most of these health-related difficulties borders on stress. If you can manage your stress well, you are likely to manage any health condition or health-related matters better. Especially in these times of COVID where, the whole world has been taken over to a large extent by the experiences and the negative experiences of COVID. If you are continually putting yourself under stress, you certainly weaken your immune system to be able to fight back any kind of difficulties that hits you. I do not hope that we do any of us experiencing of these things, but the point is that we also need to be wise in terms of how we use our time and how we manage our time. So they came up with some factors that can, lead to stress and how these can be managed. It's always key to know that when you have knowledge, you can manage your life better. Okay, knowledge is fundamental. There's always a reason for whatever happens. Nothing happens by chance. So if you do not manage your life well, then you expose yourself to situations that may not be comfortable in the long term. So let's look at the individual stress. Stress from individual factors. According to these researchers, because I want us to quickly get through this, I'll get on with it. And if you have any questions, please you can raise your hand. One observation I also noticed was that sometimes when you put it in the slide mode as it gets done, when students raise their hand, they're not able to see sometimes, but I do hope that it will not be the case. So basically, the individual factors in terms of causing stress is that difficulty in coping with change, which means that some individuals have it very, very difficult to cope with change. Some are not very amenable to change at all. What they know is what they know. And normally, when there is a process that sometimes they don't have control over, and there's a change process having to take place, they don't manage it well. All that this is saying to us, you must learn to manage change well. Sometimes you have no control. You need to learn to embrace change. Lack of confidence and assertiveness in relationship. This also speaks to the fact that as we engage with people, it's important that we are assertive. When you are not confident, when you are not able to, express your view and your position in a certain matter, it does lead to stress. People who are not assertive, they tend to take on a lot of things that sometimes they have to speak up. But because they do not, they take it on board, and we do know that it does lead to stress. So if you are not aware, then obviously I'm bringing it to attention. So when we are not confident, and especially confidence here is about the confidence within the work environment. And one of the ways I see that we lack confidence, or we will lack confidence, is when we are not able to do our work well, or when we do not understand our work well. I'm sure that if you are going to work and you do not have that, you don't feel that you are well equipped to be able to do your job at hand, you don't feel very confident, and you don't really look forward to going to work. Okay? I cannot imagine having to meet my students and I don't know what to say, or dreading the questions that I'll be asked. This is my last worry. Because I think that I have gone deep into these things to the extent that I'm sure I can provide a reasonable response to any question from the class. So I do not dread coming to class, okay? And you always dread if you do not understand the things that you are dealing with and you are going to work, you always dread because you lack confidence. You don't know what will come up and how to manage it. Assertiveness in relationship explain that you must always be able to provide your view on the matter. I'm not saying you should be aggressive. Some of us, we confuse assertiveness with aggressiveness. But when we say someone is assertive, that person can clearly state his or her position without any emotions attached. So you can say that, well, it's all right for you to think this way, but I disagree with you. I don't think we have to fight over this matter. These are my thoughts, and you also have your thoughts. It's all right. Let's just get on with it. Okay, so rather than keeping quiet, and sometimes you feel really hurt because you know that what is being peddled around is not the truth, but you are not able to speak back in a way that will set the record straight, and to make sure that sometimes you have to be assertive so that people do not take you for a ride. In organizational setting, what we noticed is that people who tend to be less assertive, or they are not assertive, people tend to treat them anyhow. Okay, people tend to take advantage of them. Remember, what I'm saying is that don't be rude, don't be aggressive on people, but at least be able to ask for the opportunity to also explain your position clearly. If it's getting out of hand, you become emotionally intelligent and just stop it. But at least you've made a point that the situation as being peddled around is not what exactly it is. Okay. But I have a note here that the pace of work in today's world will generate stress, and any condition that requires an adaptive response from an individual is known as a stressor. Basically, what I want to say with this point is that the world that we live in now is full of stress. And in fact, organizations are pushing individuals so much to the extent that you consistently feel that there's a load on you. Even when you are home, you are thinking about work. That is a sign of stress. Okay, people are being stressed out. And we need to be very mindful of that so that we do not allow it to get to us. If you do not take control, it will take control of you. But normally, how do we identify stress? How do we get a hint of stress? We get a hint of stress when you are momentarily being asked to do something that you have to quickly respond in a manner that you may not have the capacity to deal with. Or sometimes you can be overwhelmed by an issue because you do not believe you have what it takes to deal with it at that particular moment in time. So it says that any conditions that require an adaptive response from the individual is known as a stressor. You have to, because you see, you are kind of not expecting it. All of a sudden it happens, you must respond. It can cause you stress. And normally I like to use this example. If we were to be in class, I normally would say to students that, look, if I say to you right now that can we just stop and then everybody take pieces of paper, we have our first IA, especially even when you have not been told before, then all of a sudden I say to you that let's have our interim assessment, our first one. Some people will quickly, you see that they begin to panic a little bit. Some of them will be sweating a little bit. Some of them will be, all kinds of things will be happening to you. Just because you have to adapt to an unknown situation, and that is a form of stress. So when you see stress coming, you should be able to identify it. Most times, because we do not talk about these things, we are not able to pick them up when they show up. But for you to adapt to an unknown situation, it is a potential source of stress. Or you go to work and your boss says to you, oh, I have to deliver this meeting presentation at this particular meeting in 30 minutes time. Sorry, I'm not able to do it. Can you quickly step in and do it for me? You may be a very good presenter. You may know your stuff very well, but it will certainly will cause some change in emotions in your system. And that is your way of adapting to or responding to the all of a sudden stress that has been put on you. So these are ways of identifying how stress shows up largely in most of us. So at the individual level, I'm saying that lack of confidence, not being able to manage change, poor time management, I didn't comment on that, but poor time management, if you don't manage your time well, you'll always be overwhelmed. And then not having poor stress management skills. What do I mean by this? Different people deal with stress differently, but some people's way of managing stress is to exercise. Some also will like to, some ones said to me that when they are stressed, they just go to sleep. Okay, and that by the time they wake up, they are much better. Some also will want to, somebody said to me that actually they eat the things that they normally would not eat. So kind of binge eating. So they'll be eating all the junk foods, and they really take delight in that. When they are stressed, that's what they do. Somebody says to me, they'll be taking lots of chocolates and all that, and that's how they manage stress. We all manage stress differently, but what is important is that you see stress when it's coming, you notice it, and then you put in place measures to do it. I like to have solitude and rather sometimes take a book to read, and it calms me down. So we all deal with stress differently, and I know when stress is coming. I can just switch off and just take it easy when I see that this situation can lead to a stressful situation. So it's important that as managers or managers to be, we understand that stress is all over. And the point is that being a manager, you will have numerous stress situations, but when you have knowledge, you manage it better, and that's the key difference. Okay? People are running themselves down because they lack knowledge. Then in organizational setting also, I want to go through all this and then I'll pause briefly and take some questions. This slide and the next one. Organizations also give us stress. How does it happen? The first point is inadequate physical environment. When you work in an environment that is very noisy, we do not avert our minds to these things, but they do cause us stress. You may not call it to be stress, but you are not able to concentrate on your work, you are not able to work effectively. And that is a potential for stress, because if you obviously are not able to meet your deadline because you are being disrupted all the time, then your work is being disrupted all the time by noise and not being able to focus and all that, it would eventually lead to stress. Bad lighting, when you work in an environment that is not well lit, inadequate ventilation, lack of privacy. This speaks to situations where, about 15 or to 20 years ago, there was this culture of open plan office. And most of the businesses adopted the open plan arrangement. When you enter the office, everybody is at the same place, like the desks are all open, no private rooms or anything of that nature. These are all open. And when you get a call and you are on the phone, someone hears your conversation and all that. But we do know that people who are very private in nature, the introverts especially, sometimes they feel very uncomfortable when they speak on the phone, even when it's work related. Okay? It's not like even you've gotten a call for somebody to wish you happy Valentine or so. You've got a very normal call. And yes, the people feel very uncomfortable because somebody may be listening to their message. Okay, so lack of privacy can cause stress to people. That's why some individuals, when they get a call in the work environment, they may want to step out to take the call. It's not for nothing. There's a reason why people do that. Extreme heat and cold and unsuitable and unreliable equipment. When you work in a very hot environment or cold environment, whichever way it is, it has a potential for stress. And you do know that normally when you want to get a work out, that is when the machine equipment plays up. When you have unsuitable and unreliable equipment, it is a potential source of stress. Okay. So as I said, I'll go through them and I'll pause and take some questions. Inappropriate job design. When you are given inadequate training, anytime you are being asked to do something that you have not been trained for, it's a source of stress. It causes stress. Rigid procedure. If you work in an environment where you are not allowed to think outside the box, sometimes you are not told not to think outside the box, but by the systems put in place, you are not just able to do that. It is a potential source of stress. If you are very innovative in your thinking, that kind of individual, you will feel stress anytime you get that sort of restriction to do things other than the norm. Some people will always like to bring perspectives to works that are done in the environment. And when they are restricted not to do anything different from what is known, becomes a potential source of stress. Okay, so not everybody would like to just follow the norm like that. We want innovative individuals in the work environment. And each time we lack that, it can lead to stress. Inadequate staffing, when you have less, and let me link it with excessive workload. These days, that is the thing that organizations do. They have few staff doing tons of work. One person doing 3 people's work and being paid half a person's salary. That is what we find ourselves in now. So we should be mindful of this. They are potential sources of stress. Some are breaking their back because of lack of staff and excessive workload. Role ambiguity. Let me explain this. Sometimes we also do not think about this, but if you work in an environment where your role is not very clear, today you are doing this, tomorrow you are doing something else. Your job description is not clear. It can lead to role ambiguity. It's important that those in HR make clear the job roles and responsibilities of their staff so that people are focused. It's a big deal when people do not know what exactly they have been hired to do. It's a big deal. It troubles some individuals because they cannot see the way forward in terms of where they have been heading in respect of their careers. And it is a potential source of stress. Little use of skills. It's important that we know that whenever you acquire skills, when you become an expert in an area and you do not use these skills, it's going to certainly cause you stress. So be advised that as you go through this program and you begin to learn new skills and acquire new knowledge, make sure that you move in the direction of using the knowledge and the skill that you acquire or you're acquiring. It's your responsibility to drive your career. Please know that. It's your responsibility. So if you acquire all the knowledge and the skills and you do not make use of these skills, it's a sure source of stress. Okay? No participation in decision making, no responsibility. Sometimes we go to the work environment and as if we do not exist. Nobody thinks about us. Nobody involves us in the work environment. It is not a nice feeling to be in, or a nice state to be in. If you are the one doing that, you care less to other people. But if you experience it, you will notice that when people are not involved, it does cause them stress. They may not be able to add much, but that sense of community, that sense of togetherness, that synergy that is needed in the work environment requires that we bring people on board. Let's give people opportunity and let them not see anything, rather than to assume that what can they add anyway, and then we go ahead and take our own decisions without involving people. We must also learn to make people responsible, okay, by the tasks that we ask them to do. Okay. Then poor management style. There are some of you in your class, I've no doubt, whose style of management, all they know is that either you take what I'm saying or you are in trouble. That's a autocratic way of managing people. We need to be aware that anytime you apply that kind of approach, you normally may not get much from people who can really make a contribution to the organization. I do know that in some occasions, as a leader, you have to be very firm and to stand on what you believe, but you cannot be doing that all the time. You must be tolerant. You must embrace other contrary views. You must embrace diversity. Diversified views are important in both organizations. So when we use autocratic means of direct organizations, it's certainly not going to give us value. Excessive time pressures on employees. What this means is that you have employees, just like the inadequate staffing and excessive workload, having to do a lot in a short time, having to meet deadlines that are unreasonable. You are being asked to do things that you cannot practically really get through with the time assigned to it. That is a source of stress, undoubtedly. Inconsistency in management approach. We have some managers who are not fair in how they manage the staff that they lead. I do believe that we are all not the same. And therefore we have to be managed differently. But it's important that you are fair in how you deal with people. It's important that you are fair in how you deal with people. So be consistent in trying to deal with people, in managing people. When there is a clear show of unfairness, it is not a nice place to be, and it does causes stress to people within organizational setting. I'll take the next two, and then I'll pause and take some questions. Poor relationships, if you are somebody who works in an environment and you are not getting on with your superiors and your colleagues at work, it's a sure way of experiencing stress. Okay, so when you're not getting on in the work environment, it's a sure way of getting stress. A sure way of getting stress. So colleagues also we need to get on with our colleagues. We need to find a way of getting on with everyone that we work with. I'm not saying that people should become our friends. We are friends and we have acquaintances. But once you are in the work environment, you go to work. We don't go to work to make friends. When through the process you get a friend, that is a byproduct. But you don't work with people because you like them or they are your friends. You have to be tolerant and learn to work with people and aim to achieve the goals that organizations have set. We also have realized that when there's lack of feedback, when people work and there's a feedback that they are not getting, but you get to know of it when others are talking about it in a very negative way, it doesn't help the work environment. Sometimes when we talk about feedback, we are quick to think about positive feedback. No, feedback can be negative, but it's how we communicate the feedback that makes a difference. So anytime you are communicating negative feedback, be very tactful as to how you bring it across. If you're a manager and your intention really is not to run the persons down, but your intention is to help them improve on their loss, you be very careful how you give feedback. So feedback can be positive, it can also be negative, but as I emphasize again, is how we communicate negative feedback that we need to watch. Because it's important, because if you keep on observing until you wait to the end of the year when there's going to be an appraisal, only to tell the person all the mistakes that he or she has been committing from 1st January until you waited to the 1st December and tell the person, then it's a loss, it's a financial loss even to the organization. And such a manager will have some questions to answer. Uncertain future. Sorry, I didn't speak about race. The issue of race also, racial here, is not talking about black against white. It's talking about the issue of racism that sometimes exists in organizations in a very silent way. We can be very racist, and we normally associate racism with black and white. But there are some individuals who are treated in a way because they come from a certain region. They are perceived rightly or wrongly in a light that is not acceptable. Let's be mindful of this. The issue of race is real in our work environment. And there are some individuals that if you do not belong to that group of people, you do not count, you don't matter. In fact, there are instances where people have suffered promotion challenges. They are not promoted, not because they are not good, not because they are not making real contributions, but because they are perceived to belong to a certain tribe. Absolutely important. When it comes to hiring people, we lose out. And what I mean by losing out is that we do not embrace diversity. So we hire all the people that we work with, they come from our hometown. We are losing out big time because we are not benefiting from diverse views, diverse perspectives. Serious organizations will make it mandatory to have diversity included in how they hire people and the people that they work with. If you go back to our first lecture, we spoke about the contemporary issues in management today. And one of the points that we mentioned was the issue of diversity. Diversity is important. And we do know the organizations take it quite seriously when it comes to having a balanced arrangement in hiring people. These days, there's a fair processes or there's a fair determination, from organizations where they tend to bring in male and female. There's a kind of a balancing act that goes on when we are hiring people. And this is all good that we have both male and female in the work setting. Because the truth is that they think differently. Male think differently from female. Okay, and you need those perspectives to enhance the work environment in terms of the goals that we seek to pursue and to achieve as an organization. But what we do not avert our minds to, and we should begin to do more of that, is the tribes that are hired into organizations. Okay, recently I heard a very interesting, thing about one particular ministry. That if you go there, The people who are being brought into that ministry largely come from a certain tribe. And the only reason is that the minister who is in charge of that ministry comes from that particular region. Get it? That is the highest level of racism that one can ever imagine of. So when we talk about racism, we should not just be looking at a white person against a black person. We are so racist in our own setting. And we need leaders who will think and have a balanced approach. You know, there's one business I give advice to, and it amazes me how this person actually brings people on board. You see that there's no strings attached in terms of racism. You go there, and the people that even works for this organization, none of the people come from the owner's hometown or region. None. And the response this person gives is that it's about the work and those who can give you value at the end of the day. That is the way we must think. Okay? It cannot be that all the people can give you value come from, let's say, Eastern region. It cannot be that all the people can give you value come from Ashanti region or Volta region. It cannot be. We have to be balanced. And please, when you have knowledge, don't behave like you don't have knowledge. Absolutely important. We need to benefit from the resources we are spending on education. And the only way we benefit is to show that differentiation, that we have knowledge, and therefore we'll practice appropriately. We've been dealing with organizations, and the more diversified you are, the more even sustainable your business becomes. Because people bring perspectives that you have never considered, which one organization or one group of people cannot have dominance over. No region in Ghana has dominance over knowledge. We must think about this deeply and embrace that in our processes. If you have power in the organization, do not be a racist. Make sure that you are balanced in the way you treat people, in the people you hire. In fact, you do your business a lot more good if you bring in diversity in the recruitment process. Sexual harassment. Well, this is a very important subject matter, and managers must be aware of it. Managers must be aware of it. When we talk about harassment, yes, it comes from both ends. Female can harass men, and men can also harass women. But we didn't know, let's not pretend, we didn't know that most times women suffer sexual harassment. So the men in organizations, be warned. You can crumble your hard-earned credibility if you even have one through sexual harassment. Because if you have one, you will not sexually harass. That's the point I'm seeking to make. If you have credibility, you will not harass any person. So if you want to go far in your career, beware of sexual harassment. Sexual harassment is about unequal power relationships. Because I hold so much power over you, I use it to my advantage and I harass you sexually. That is not acceptable in organizations. Organizations should not tolerate sexual harassment. For your information, the University of Ghana, if you don't know, the University of Ghana makes a big deal of sexual harassment. It makes a big deal, and nobody should allow him or herself to be harassed by anybody, especially the she's. Normally, the she's who are harassed, you know. And you must understand this. Don't allow anyone to harass you sexually, because they do not have that right to do that. And if you're a manager, beware that sexual harassment can destroy your career, because you think you are powerful, you will not have any power any longer. If you are driven in that manner and you think along those lines. Or you may think you have the power, but as you say, you'll be what dance now then you are watching. I mean, nobody will respect you. You do not have that influence that you must have. And a lot of managers are like that. They are managers in name, they do not have managers in reality, because they do not wield any power, any influence, because they are all over the place harassing people and no regards for what they say to people. So be aware of this. The importance that we attach to this is so much that I cannot overemphasize it. Absolutely important. Uncertain future, job insecurity. There are some people who work in organizations where they do not even know whether tomorrow they have a job or not. Job insecurity. Anytime you work in an environment where you cannot be certain of your job, then it breeds insecurity. Certainly you will not be stable in your thoughts and you will be under stress. You never think about them. I'm bringing these perspectives because we do experience them, but we don't see them as stress related. Few promotion opportunities. There are occasions where people have worked for years and they are not being promoted. even though they actually meet the requirements. Sometimes people suffer promotion because somebody wants to sexually harass them and they will not allow that, so you pay for it. Those people who do that, your time certainly will come if you do not change your ways, because the life is so interesting that the very people that you take for granted now, sooner or later, they'll be taking decisions on you, or even in the making, at least on you, for your children. So let's be fair-minded in dealing with people. One thing I want to get you to into your system is that life is not a race. There's a place for everyone. So do not be threatened by other people's progression. Never be. Never be. The fact that you've gone ahead does not mean I cannot catch up and overtake. That is one thing you need to understand. So let's promote people if they deserve it. Okay, because the pain that people go through when they actually meet the criteria, but they are deprived because of individuals who think they are powerful. Well, we wish them well, but their time certainly will come. Then low status job. Low status job. Whenever you work in an environment where you are not using your skills, you always get a sense of doing a low status job. And I cannot overemphasize it. This will come up again in another form when you look at the next, lecture. It comes up and it tells you the importance of it. I have said several times that your career is your own responsibility. So anytime you have the knowledge, you've acquired the knowledge, make the effort, be daring, move in the direction where you use the knowledge that you gained. Because if you do not, you get a sense of doing a low status job. Okay? Then the next one is divided loyalties. This speaks of conflicts between personal aspirations and organizational requirements. Let me explain this. As people work for organizations, they have their own interests, they have their own expectations. And these expectations influence the way they work. In fact, that is the reason why we always advise that we need to have people whose personality and largely their interest matches the work at hand. Because of the issue of conflict between your personal aspiration and organizational requirements. If you do not have a fit between the person's desires and aspirations as to what they want to do and what they want to be, and the work that they have been assigned to do, there will be divided loyalty. That is why some people go to work, and because they don't take interest in what they are doing, they'll be doing their own thing, which is bad enough anyway. You see, so it's not for anything that we emphasize that we need to go through proper processes in hiring people. Sometimes people have to pretend to be working because, well, that is what they have. That is what they have, so they pretend to be working. But we want people to work, not to pretend to be working. It's because of our hiring processes. A lot of organizations are hiring people based on who you know, but not on what people can offer. There's nothing wrong when you know somebody who is powerful can help you. There's nothing wrong with it. But we must make sure that we hire the right people so that there's no conflict between what they want to do and what the organization expects them to do. Because these things do exist. You may know some of these that I'm talking about, but perhaps you don't know that it will sit under divided loyalties. People must be loyal to the organization and not have a divided focus. You must be loyal to your organization so that you can contribute effectively to the fortunes of the business that you work for. So bear this in mind that hiring people, we must take into cognizance the fact that the persons coming, whether you know it or not, they have their own aspirations. They have a mind of their own, and they'll be working for you. Make sure that their thoughts, and there's some kind of congruency between their thoughts and what you want the organization to do or achieve. And then conflicts between job and family and social relationships. Let's explain this, that we are social beings. If you go back to the first lecture that we had, one of the characteristics of an organization is that an organization is a social entity. It's a social entity. There's going to be interaction, there's going to be interdependence, there's going to be relationships being forged in the workplace, at least for executing the work. So when we talk about job, family, and social relationships, it's in the right place because these things do happen. There's a certain concept in organizational studies referred to as work-family conflict. Work-family conflict. WFC, work-family conflict. Now, this is the conflict that occurs in families because of work. Conflict that occurs in families because of work. So you see that there's a misunderstanding and confusion going on in the family because of work. Either the person is staying late at work or comes home, and even when you are home, you are not home because you are always behind your work. Okay, you are not paying attention to your family and always about work. So that's the WFC, work-family conflict. We do know that most times men experience that a lot. Men experience work-family conflict a lot, WFC, because they will be coming home late and they will blame it on work. Whether it's true or not, only God knows, but sometimes also even when they are home, they are still working. Okay, so they are not with the family. They are always focusing on work. Yes, we must work, but we must work and work wisely. That is WFC, work-family conflict. There's also another side to it, another concept called family work conflict. That is the other way around. Family work conflict. Family work conflict, FWC. This time is a conflict in work because of family. Conflict in work because of family. So in the case of family work conflict, you are having difficulties at the work environment. The difficulties are not coming from the family, they are coming from the workplace because of family. How does this manifest? This manifests sometimes you have to take your boy to school or your girl to school, drop the child before you go to work. And by the time you get to work, you are maybe 30 minutes late, or sometimes in the midst of a very important work assignment, you have to stop and go and pick your child from school and all that. Sometimes you wake up and there's so much to do before you go to work and all that. I hope that you do know how to pound fufu in the morning, the evening before you go to work. If you do that, I can only wish you well. But you are going to have the family work conflict. You are going to get to work late. And this is going to lead to conflict in the work environment. So, and we know that women tend to experience FWC more. Okay, so whereas men are bringing conflict into the family because of work, women are bringing conflict into work because of family. So men experience a lot more WFC and women experience more FWC. So our job, family, and social responsibilities do also divide our focus depending on what we are looking at, and it becomes a potential source of stress. But let me bring another point to your attention. There's an observation also that is being made that women who are high flyers these days, the women I believe have cracked the ceiling. They've gone through. There are women who are doing some great things out there. There are women who are movers and shakers who take decisions, very important decisions in organizations. There are women who are playing very important roles in organizations. These are the ones I call the high flyers. These high flying women, we are realizing that they are experiencing both work-family conflict and family work conflict. They are high flyers, therefore it calls for more push in the work environment. They are sometimes spending more time at work. When they come home, they also spend much more time. But we do know that the women can be more balanced in terms of how they manage some of these things. But nonetheless, women do experience the thing that men experience, the WFC, and you know that they may be high flyers, but when they come home, they have a family responsibility. So sometimes they will be the ones who even leave the work to go and pick the child in the middle of a very important meeting. That is a family work conflict. So high-flying women are experiencing both WFC and FWC. What is the solution? The solution is that women who are very high-flying women doing great things for organizations, they need a lot of support. And that calls for support from the men that hang out with them or their families. It's very important that if you're a man, some men unfortunately I do not get it, but I have come across situations that men feel threatened by the progression of women. I do not get it, and I hope I never get it, because what is a threat? What is a threat if women do well? Okay, what is a threat? So we should be more supportive. Some women rather will sabotage them, and that is the highest level of evil that you can never do. They sabotage them because the women do more, they are achieving more than them. Put your house in order rather than being envious and not supporting women who achieve more. So my advice to men, the very good advice, if you want to live long, be supportive of the women, okay, and also be more supportive of high-flying women, because we need a lot of that in the system, all right? And when we do that, the WFC and the FWC, which causes stress, will be well handled, and it will serve a very good purpose. The good thing is that to note is that, I'm sure I may have commented on it, somehow the women manage stress better than the men. I'm sure you know that. You can check the statistics. The women do live longer most times than the men. And so stress is killing a lot of people. And the women, even though they are stressed most times, they somehow cope with it better. But they need more support if they are high flyers especially. The other consequences in organizational settings are high levels of absenteeism, staff turnover, accidents, and workforce sabotage. When you have situations where people are not being treated fairly and well, and they feel stressed, they will be absent from work most times. Attrition rate of staff turnover is high. When they join the firm, they don't stay for long, and then they will leave. Some even not intentionally, some can find themselves in accident situations in the work environment, and some also intentionally sabotage the organization. So these are the causes of stress in different forms in the workplace. So I have done a lot of talking, and it's intentional. I would like to pause now and take some comments or questions from the class. If you do have one, please do ask. I'll be very, very happy to explain. So any comments or any question, who can attest to some of the things I've said? Yeah, really.
Doug, please, my question is this. When you experience a negative, when you have a negative experience with working with somebody from a particular tribe or from a particular setting, and it influences your decision in working with future people from such situations or such environment, are you being racial?
Oh yes, certainly. I mean, I think if I've not said it, Erin, I think that it's important that, you see, I'm not saying that we should not learn. I'm not saying that we should not learn from our past experiences. I mean, I will not be the one to say that. We must certainly learn from every experience that we go through. But we must also be very careful how we deal with people. If I disagree with you on a matter, I disagree with you on that matter with you. I'm likely not to extend that same thing to somebody who comes from your tribe. We must learn to have our own experiences with people. That issue of generalizing and demonizing everybody because they come from a certain tribe, or sometimes they are just hearsays. Okay, you have not even experienced the thing that you are hearing that you are believing. The thing that you are believing because you heard, you're not even experienced. I'm not saying that you should express a negative thing for you to really be cautious. But what I'm saying is that we should be fair-minded in dealing with people. One of the surest ways I have seen over the years helps us to become very balanced in our thoughts is to, in trying to take such decisions as to how to engage people and all that, briefly put yourself in the other person's shoes and then step back and then take the decision. Okay? When you do that, it helps you. It at least it tempers your position a bit. So really, that's what I would say, that yes, learn to have your own experiences with people as much as possible. Don't generalize, because it doesn't help any one of us. I'm not saying that people are not doing it, but you see, as I said, if you have knowledge, do not operate as if you do not have knowledge. Okay, that is how you stand out. If you have knowledge and apply it, you always will stand out. Everybody will look in your direction because you do things in a way that others are not able to understand or appreciate. So that would be my response. Frank, I see your hand up.
Yes, sir. About the workforce sabotage, can it be related to these football players and their coaches?
How do they do it?
Like, they want a particular coach to leave. They intentionally decide to be losing matches on their field just to cut down the performance of the coach.
Yes, I mean, yes, and we know that there's a way that, I think it was Mourinho who suffered that, along the line, because he was working with some superstars. But you see, I think that cannot be tolerated. You can never know more than your coach, even though you think you know. Your coach has something that you do not have. Okay, but unfortunately in football, the dynamics are completely different. So people will sabotage. Yes, and normally when they sabotage like that, they don't go very far. Okay, the players who do that, they also end up being noticed. And of course, I would not want to hire a player who will eventually sabotage. But I do get the point you're making, Frank, that sometimes football players can sabotage the coach by not putting in their best. I don't know what the stress the coach is causing them, because maybe they are seeking for something, but if objectively they are seeking for something, then it's the responsibility of the coach to make sure that you accommodate them halfway. But I do agree that sometimes people do sabotage because they just do not enjoy the work environment that they are in. We have, let's go for Gifty, and then we go for Kwasi, and then we can move on quickly. Right, Gifty, you have the floor.
Yes, Professor, good morning. And coming from NGO background concerning excessive workload, it looks like you don't have work-life balance. So what do you do?
Well, I think that the issues that we are talking about here serves two purposes. The first is that if you are the one who is taking the decision on other people's behalf, then at least you know the damage that you will be doing to other people. That's number one. Number two, if indeed the work is so much that it's having large some sort of impact on you in a very negative way, which certainly to be if you are doing more than excessive work than necessary, then my suggestion would be that you have to weigh these odds, because sometimes it depends on the boss you are dealing with. But one of the things you learn in organizational behavior is that you must know when to say what and when to pick people or to get people at their good moments. So that what I will do is that I will understand all the people that I deal with to a large extent, and I know when to talk to you. So I will approach the boss in a time that I believe that the boss is much more relaxed, and then go and raise this issue that boss, I really enjoy working here, and things I've been putting my all, but it looks like the work is so much overwhelming. I'm quite happy to continue doing my best, but it would be useful for us if it's possible to bring in additional hands, or there's a way. I mean, you have to find a way of talking about it. I'm not pretending that all bosses are reasonable. If you come and say this to me, I really will listen to you and try. And sometimes people also don't realize that this is actually the part, because you are just getting on with it, you're not complaining, or you're not saying anything about it. They feel that all is well. So you have to take it case by case basis. There are some people that when you say this to them, they will certainly hear you out and then try and do something about it. But there are some also that will tell you that I'm sorry, that is what we can. If you are not interested, then I'm sorry, you can just pack baggage and go. That will not be a very good response. But certainly, if you have a boss like that, then you begin to have second thoughts. Do you want to be here forever like that? Certainly, I will not advise. Then you need to also begin to look at other opportunities somewhere else. But most times, I would like to work with the boss to make sure that this difficulty is addressed. And much as some are reasonable, I'm also aware that some people are not reasonable. They will not listen to you, and they will tell you that, even if you are not interested, somebody will need the job. So yes, you can move on for the person. But when you have that posture as a boss, your work does not go very far. people will just give you just enough. You are not able to get extraordinary experiences from people. So this would be my response to it, 15.
Thank you.
I don't know whether you have any other thoughts what I'm saying. Do you think that it's likely to work with you and your boss? If you are not the one who is giving people too much work, are you sure that your boss will listen? Have you tried it? What have you done about it? If it affects you directly, what kind of work? Any comment on this? Have you tried it? What we have said at all?
No, the NGO is not just Ghana. You report, and tax is from outside and inside, both international and local, external and internal. So that is how we operate. So sometimes I just bombarding you left and right with work.
It's also another thing. Okay, so with this better and better particulars, I guess some other insights. Sometimes also you have to have a way of arranging your work. So for every time you go to work, you have priorities. You see, you must have clear priorities that you are working on. The reason why sometimes we feel stress is that we do not know what the priorities are, and therefore we would like to do a lot at the same time. But meanwhile, the work they have been given, that's also one of the ways that you can be assertive. If you say to me that, thank you very much, I've received the work, but at the moment I have this assignment, that assignment, and that assignment, and I'm targeting that I have to get this work done by Friday. I'm quite happy to do this, but would it be all right for it to be done by next week? We have to start doing that. But if people begin to load you and they are not giving indication as to what the priority areas are, because you must always prioritize your work. You cannot do everything. So where the priority is must be the focus. But when you yourself, you are not established where the priority areas are, then it appears that you must answer every question that is thrown at you or any word that is given to you. So that's another addition to the response I want to give.
Thank you, sir.
All right, Kwasi, I see your hand, and then we can hopefully move on. Kwasi, we can't hear you. All right, Dennis, let's hear you. We can't hear Kwasi.
Yes, good morning. I just want to find out how does, right now you've talked about a lot of things, so I want to know how existing literatures justify or experience the concept of diversity, as in having gender balance in teams or in a working environment. So do we have an evidence-based, hello, can you hear me?
Just go ahead.
Yeah, so do we have any kind of research to buttress that if you have maybe this number of women or men on this in this team, then this is how the results are going to be? Because most of the time we talk about empowering women or having a certain percentage of women in our organization. So I know if there's existing literature to explain that or just
Okay, so as for literature, well, that is what we live by. Okay, so I will give you Andrew. Can you stop that person if you have access? That's why you are focused. So you manage the class. Yeah. So then, well, as for literature, there are tons of them, and I'm going to direct you to go and look for the existing literature. So if you go to Google Scholar, you can go and find out about workplace diversity, and then you can get topics, things to read from different perspectives on it. So my job is to point you to the documents for you to find for yourself as a manager. There is enough out there if you want to go. When you step into the space of corporate governance, there are some countries have been making mandatory that you must have certain number of people, percentage of people. I cannot say for numbers, but it's largely, if you look at corporate governance, and the same thing will permeate organizations. It will go through, run down through organizations. Remember that organizations are normally driven by those at the top. And most of the boards, the strategy of the organization will be driven by the strategy that the organization wants to roll out. And strategy is always developed by those at the top. And even at the top, we are emphasizing diversity. It can never be that at the lower level, diversity will not be important. If you go to a place like Norway and you are composing boards, you are mandated to ensure that you are at least 40% of the board composition must be women. And this came because of the credit crunch that happened in 2007 and 8. Okay? Because there was understanding that it was all men, and therefore they are not getting diversified viewpoints in taking important decisions. When you go to the US, when you're composing boards, you must have about 25% of the board composition must be women. Okay? When you go to the UK, it's about the same. When you come to Ghana, I don't know, because we do not emphasize these things. It's very important that we talk about this, because what happens at the board level is likely to permeate what takes place at the management level, because management are supposed to enforce decisions or strategies of the board, and the management will work through the people to achieve organizational objectives. So my response to your question is that at the board level, these facts are emphasized largely, and it's because of the fact that if you lack diversity, you are likely to be making decisions that are not well balanced in the way they appear. And therefore, when it comes to organizations, the same thing. I mean, as for the literature, I've directed you. I'm not going to quote ABC for you. I want you to go and find out for yourself. If you don't find it, then you can come back to me. But you and I know, how can you have an organization and have all men dominated and all women dominated? We need that balance. We are not going to say that you need 4 men or 5 women, or 5 women and 4 men. We are not going to say that. It's about the balance. Okay, it's about that determination to ensure that we have people here who complement each other, not only at the skills level, but at the gender level. If you have never thought about it, that men and women do not think the same, then obviously I'm bringing it to attention that, surprise, surprise, men and women do not think the same. Okay, and this is from, this is just from knowledge that are found out there. But if you go into literature, you will see that a lot of studies that looks at gender and males. Yeah, there are sometimes that the decisions and findings are inconclusive, but there are also clear indications that demonstrate that women and men do not think the same. So I will ask you to go through the literature yourself and to find out. That is why we are training you. So let's take the comments. Good morning. Kindly ignore. Okay. Well. All right. So, as I said to you, if you want to live long, be balanced in your thinking. Okay. That is how life is. You have to be very balanced in your thinking, because it makes a huge difference in the work setting, and you will thrive and you do well if you are balanced. Than when you think you have all the answers and everybody must do the way you want it to be, and you are not considerate of other people's views. These are tried and tested issues, and if you read the literature on emotional intelligence and all that, these are things that come into it in different ways and shades. So they are very important stuff. All right, so there are some things that I want you to read for yourself, which I will skip through quite a bit. As I said to you, we will not be able to go through everything because the slides are quite many, but I'll ask that you go through yourself. But I've also said that anything that I do not discuss in class, I will not examine you on them. I'm mindful of the fact that you need to get what you need to get. Get the knowledge and also get a good grade through your learning, and that becomes, well, appropriate. It's only about passing, it's about getting knowledge and applying it. These are the ways I like to look at these things. So these are moderators of stress at work. What this says is that there are ways of managing stress, and good health is one of them. You see, when you are very healthy, you deal with stress better. Cognitive appraisal, self-fulfilling prophecy. If you believe you are not going to cope with a particular event, that will happen, and the opposite can also be true. This is preaching positive mindsets. Okay? There's evidence that what you think, you are able to attract it. So what he's saying is that if you believe you overcome, you are likely to overcome. So that perception, that perspective we have is important. That is why it's always be careful not to hang around negative people, because negative people are likely to attract negative things. And if you are one, please change. I will never be around a negative person because life is short. Hardiness. Hardiness is also one of the ways of moderating stress. It says that it's an outlook of life characterized by a welcoming approach to change and a sense of being in control. Let me explain this. That the issue of hardiness speaks of change. Anytime you are not able to manage change well, it's a source of stress. Okay, so what this means that if you have the capacity to accept change, you are able to manage stress better. In fact, we do know even from literature that people who accept change, they live longer. You know, if you look at yourself in the mirror, and sometimes you may be in your 40s or 50s and you think, when I was 22, I look great. Now, as time goes on, you look great, but it's not like before. You must accept that change. Okay, research shows that people who accept change, they live longer. If you keep on worrying about your looks, okay, I'm not saying you should not take care of your looks, but sometimes you have no control. You must accept it and get on with your life. It is one of the ways of dealing with stress. So I'm skipping all this for you to go through beliefs and values. I want to comment on some aspects on perception briefly. Okay, so I want to comment on this slide briefly and then we'll move on. Perception is also one of the things that I want to touch on and then we can move on. That as a manager, be aware that we all have perceptions of people that we interact with. We all have perceptions of people that we interact with. Be aware. And these perceptions that we hold do influence how we deal with people. Okay? So I'm trying to call attention to this, and if you are picking it, I'm certainly emphasizing some very important things that we do not think about as managers. That sometimes the way we deal with people, perceptions, the name that you heard, the surname, gives you a certain view of the person. Okay, before the person asks a question or speaks or says something, you form a certain impression of the person. These are all perceptions. So perception is our unique picture or image of how we see the world. We all have a certain picture of the world in our minds, and we must be aware of this because they do impact on how we engage people. Perception is the root of all organizational behavior. It's a very serious statement. This is saying to you that the way people behave in the work setting, the way people engage with each other in the work setting, is the root of all organizational behavior. The way people behave lies in the perceptions that they have of the individuals around them. If you're a manager, you can attest to it. The way you engage with Amma is not the same as the way you engage with Kwame or whatever, or even Joyce. Okay, why is that? It's a certain thought, a certain view you have of these individuals that is coming through how you engage with them. So we relate to people largely based on perceptions, and our perceptions influence the interpretation even we give to things. When somebody says something to you, haven't you had an occasion where somebody has said something harmless in their mind, but you have seen it very harmful? Why is that? It's all because of perception. Now let's look at this discussion here. The Director of Human Resource sends an email to 4 team leaders of the various sections, asking them to provide statistics of time work within their section during the past 6 months and projections for the next 6 months. If you look at this question that has been asked, assuming you're a director, you're a manager, and you've gotten this from your director, what would be your interpretation to this? What would be your interpretation to this? Let me quickly go through because of time. Let's look at the 4 unit heads. This is how they responded. Team leader 1 considers this to be reasonable and welcome request to provide information which will help lead to improved staffing levels. This is the interpretation that the first leader gave to this email that the leader got from the director. The second leader saw the request as unreasonable demand intended only to enable management exercise closer supervision and control over activities of the section. The third leader had no objection to providing the information, but was suspicious that it may lead to possible intrusion into the running of the section. See? The fourth team leader thought it was a positive action by management to investigate. To investigate ways of reducing costs and improving efficiency throughout the organization. My thoughts. To be honest with you, when I saw this, these were my real thoughts. I thought it was good and that it will help management plan and help pay overtime promptly. This, I feel, will help in staff motivation and commitment, rather than the delays often experienced in making overtime payments. The point I'm trying to make to you is that these four leaders gave different interpretations to what they had. Why is that? The answer lies in perception. So we have perception with us all the time. The other point also, then the question that is very reasonable to ask is that how do we avoid this? How do we avoid this in organizational communication as this one? The way to avoid perception and people giving different interpretation to issues is when you are very clear. So the director would have helped the situation if the director would have just gone ahead to explain the essence of requesting further information. Once you leave open statements like this, you give room for people to interpret it in their own way. Okay, so this is a point that I want us to be aware of, that as managers, as directors, as people who take decisions and influence other people, we need to be very clear on how we communicate. Why? Because of the perceptions that people have. They will bring that to bear in the interpretation that they offer when they are not clear on the matter at hand. So be aware that perception is real, and even though this is an age-old thing, we normally do not avert our minds to it. Okay, so begin to think about the perceptions that you have. Always ponder to reflect on the position you are taking. Is it being influenced by a perception? Is it a negative perception? Normally that is what tends to be. We tend to have negative views on things that shouldn't be. And I'm going to prove to you that you indeed can have perceptions which may not be right. And so I want you to, so please I ask all the things. I want you to, go through this yourself. So I'm just going to skip quite a bit of this, and then I'll end at a point where, yes, I want to touch on this, and then we can firm up this and move on to the next. I want to touch on halo effect and stereotype, and all this come about because of perception. Okay, halo effect and stereotype. To understand the nature of perception is to understand, at least in part, the sources and nature of many organizational problems. This is also a very serious point to make. What this is saying is that for you to understand the source of the difficulties that we have in organizations, you have to take interest in understanding the perceptions of that work environment. Okay? So individuals carry perceptions that they have, and that influences the work environment. This is what this is saying to you. The first is halo effect. Halo effect. Halo effect is basically something that we normally would focus on to pass judgment on individuals. So it's a judgment based on a single striking characteristics, such as an aspect of dress, speech, posture, or nationality. What this is saying is that sometimes the way people dress, somebody will dress in a certain way, and we assign meanings to it in a way that we may be wrong. Okay, we may be wrong. Yes, you can be right, but you can also be wrong. Or the way somebody speaks or communicates, we can assign some kind of interpretation to it in a negative way. Normally, we could note these things in a very negative way. sometimes we see the posture that we see, how people come across. It may be all over them, but you may have to have your own experience. So we draw conclusions on the posture that we see because of our perceptions, or even nationality. Somebody tells you that, oh, I'm from this country, and then we form a certain view of them, okay, because of our perceptions. So let's be aware. And you see, if you're a manager, these things are important to talk about because we deal with people all the time. So if we do not manage stereotyping and things like that, we hold different, very bad views of people, it can mar the relationship that we have with these people even before we engage them. See, so halo effect and stereotyping, they go hand in hand. If you look at stereotype, it says that it's a category or personality type to which we consign people on the basis of their membership of some known group. So that's what somebody says that, oh, I'm an Ashanti. Or how many times have we hear the Kwus, they like a lot of money, they like money. Okay? You know, these are all stereotyping. Who doesn't like to get some funds or some money? Who doesn't? But we generalize, okay, for the mupiska, okay, that sort of thing. These are all stereotyping, and that's the point. I have to use the example so that you understand clearly what I mean, that we stereotype people. What do we say about Ashantis? What do we say about Gans and all that? These are stereotyping. The same thing goes into the work setting where we interpret things largely influenced and fueled by our perceptions. Very important that we understand that these things can influence the work environment in a very negative way. The perceptions that we have can impact on people in a very, very negative way. So as managers, let's be aware that perceptions can impact on how we engage people. Fran, I see your hand up. Okay, Fran, did you have a question to ask? All right, so please hold on if you do. Let's look at this slide now. And the essence of this slide is just going to be very brief. And again, I will normally ask you to complete the sentences for me, but I'm going to tell you the responses that I get all the time. And that response will not differ from what you are going to give. I'm very certain about that. Explore your own stereotype by completing the following sentences with 3 terms that you think describe most or all members of the category concerned. And normally I ask students in class to complete this statement. And I get all kinds of things. So I start with university lecturers are, some will say that they are book-long, some will say that they are, normally I don't get straight answers to this. Some will say all kinds of things, some good, some bad about university lecturers. But one thing I've done, having done this over the years, is that students are not very firm on what to say about university lecturers. And I understand because you are being currently taught by university lecturer anyway. So you are mindful what to say. So I do understand that. So I don't worry much about the kind of response that I get, because people are either they are being careful what to say or not say. All right. But when I come to the next one, police officers in Ghana, I always get a overwhelming response from the class. They are corrupt. They are corrupt. These are the responses that I get when you throw this to students. They say all very negative things about police officers in Ghana. And then the dominant response I get, nurses in our hospitals, I get the response that they are rude. Some will say that they are mean and all that. They say very bad things about nurses. Most of the responses I get are very negative. What I've seen over the years, the worst is politicians. I get that they are thieves. Students will say that they are thieves, and they'll be on and on saying very bad things about politicians. And these are comments that are influenced largely by, the responses that I get from students. But are politicians the only thieves? There are more thieves in other industries and in other sectors than politicians. And is it a fair thing for us to generalize that politicians are thieves? We know that they are not angels, but neither are they angels in the Ministry of Health or Ministry of Education or Finance or wherever you see some of these ministries. We have all kinds of characters there, but we are so bold to associate thievery to politicians. And why do we do that? These are all perceptions. These are all perceptions. I'm not saying that we don't have politicians who are greedy and they go over the board, but we also do have politicians who are genuine and who really are. And so you see that even if you are one person, you think about it. If just because of the 9, I know that we normally go and say that majority are this and all that, but if we lump everybody together, I do not think that is a fair way of describing people, categorizing people. In the hospitals, having you had a very nice experience with a nurse, having you had also a very good experience with the staff, met police officers who are very supportive, who are not helping you because of money. I have come across, maybe you may not have, but the point I'm just trying to make to you is that as managers, that is the key thing you must bear in mind. It's important that you have a very balanced mind and a very open mind. Do not be quick to generalize. We start like this and it takes us to other things. You see, it takes us to other things. We demonize people because of where they come from. If you look at the last point, and I'm not going to ask you to say anything, just put your tribe there. And then first put someone's tribe there and say the thing that you want to say about them. And then put your tribe there. You will also find that people will say something about your tribe. So a particular tribe, you can put your tribe there. In Ghana are. And one of my favorite ones, which, just to bring it to your attention, is that, not that I'm picking on them, but one of my favorite ones, we put in the panties. I'm sure there are some panties in the class. One of my favorite ones, and if you want to know, I will tell you. But I'm sure you want to know, so let me go ahead. When I put it there, some will say that they like Inchichui. They like Inchichui, but I don't think it's a bad thing to like Inchichui and all that. And some will also see all kinds of things. So then I always say, tell us, please, now we have told you, you like Inchichui. Okay. And then we also see all kinds of things about people that may not necessarily be true. Please, I'm getting a call from my... Really can't hear. I knew I switched off briefly. I'm getting I don't understand what you said about panties. Naomi, well, I'm sure your colleagues will tell you what I said about panties. I've got some very good friends in panties, and so I'm sure I'll not say anything bad about them necessarily. But who heard what I said about the panties? Who can tell us? Oh dear, Nanaya, what about the clapping before? I know where you are leading to, but we are not going to fall for it. We like our Propansa and our Benpai and all that. The clapping people. And you see, Andrew, I just said Inchichui. Naomi, Andrew has responded to you that the panties like Inchichui. I didn't pronounce it well, and all that. Somebody said that Ashantis like money and all that. Okay, nurses in Ghana and their character is known by everyone according to Christian Sappho. But if you go, I can say to you, if you go to the, and I don't want you to go there, but if you go to the University of Ghana Medical Center, you meet some fantastic nurses there, I tell you. Of course, you cannot just walk to the place. Normally, one goes to the university hospital, then you are referred to if you have to go there. You cannot walk there. It's a referral place. But I can say with you that you have some fantastic professionals there. Okay, I don't wish anybody to go there anyway. But just to let you know that, as somebody said, the character of nurses are known in Ghana, but there are some fantastic nurses. And that's the point I'm trying to draw in, that similarly, we have some very good police officers. We have also very good politicians. Okay, and then we have all kinds of other things that we are not aware of, but we generalize. Somebody says that always use English as something about quantity, Letitia said, but I'm not getting. Harrison, do we consider the moral value of an individual before they are employed in an organization? Well, that's a very interesting one. Yes, but there's a way of eliciting that if you know which question to ask. Harrison, I would normally be interested in this based on the kind of work that the person is coming to do. But you see, moral issues are moral issues. Okay? Moral issues are moral issues. But I think that we can always, there are certain things that you can bring up based on the question that you ask. So I think that it's very important that we look at these things, especially if you are doing a job that requires that you put up certain behaviors or you come across in a certain way. You cannot employ a pedophile to go and work in a nursery, for example. Okay, so I expect that if you have a nursery and you are going to employ somebody, these are some of the things that you do have to look out for. Unfortunately, we think that we owe the job, so we must do the interview. Okay, instead of us to bring in professionals who would know which questions to ask. If I have to sit on a job interview, I look at the job description and the requirements of the job. And the questions will center around that. So you are likely to get people answering the question in a manner that gives you that comfort that this person is suitable or not. Okay, so it's very important that we consider the work to be done and also bring on board the people who understand these things. We do not like to pay. As in Ghana, most times we like everything free, and so we will not pay. For people who have what it takes to be able to lead the process for you. And eventually, it costs us. Can you imagine if you bring a pedophile into your staff, and you have a nursery, or you have and there are people like that. You have a school for young children. And this person comes to mishandle these children, and it gets into the news. They destroy your business, because I will not bring my child there. You get it? So these are the things that we always have to think about when it comes to hiring people. And I'm talking about this because the question that Harrison asked about moral or values that might be considered. Yes, values matter. We need to bring people who have certain values. If you want to work, let's say, in a Christian organization, and you do not believe in God, okay, you are just interested in the work, and there are situations like that can happen. I mean, there's going to be a conflict, huge conflict, because what you do will never be in sync with the core values of the organization. And so even when they are hiring for certain bodies, sometimes we assume that people are what we think they are, even though they may not add much to the organization. We bring them in because we don't pay attention. All I'm saying is that we know what to ask depending on what is being required of the person. Somebody asked about how the effect is on an individual due to something on that person. Stereotypes and generalization a person gets associated with because of a relation to that group. That's my teaching assistant there, Naomi. Naomi, you give a very good response to it. Well done. So Naomi has given I beg to differ. I think moral aspect is different from crime, pedophile, is a crime and womanizing is a moral aspect. Well, Dennis, you can disagree with it, but if you don't have moral values, you will engage in pedophilia behaviors. Okay? You see that womanizing is a moral effect. You think that you cannot be arrested for chasing somebody's wife, then it's pre-porn. You think that that is a moral value. You can be chased if you don't know the rules of the game. You can't be chased. The laws do not allow you. Okay, you can be in trouble. Haven't you heard several times people have been arrested because of this? So if you disagree, well, that is your own issue. But it is something that can be considered as moral issue. Okay, so never take these things for granted when it comes to how people are hired. Morality is at the core of every organization. Okay, and we should not try and make some things more demonized than others. It's okay to call a pedophile as a crime, but it's fine for you to destroy someone's relationship by chasing other people's wives and all that. That one is okay. It's not a crime, according to Dennis. All right, so I want us now to bring this class to a close, and we will enter this letter, and I want us to quickly spend a moment on the next slide, discussions, which I want us to start at least. So I will stop this and I'll move on to the second lecture, and then we can progress. I think at least we should start this lecture today, because it will help us to cover some ground on this. Yeah, so is it also good to consider the religious background before employing someone? Well, it's important. It's important that we look at the work at hand. You see, so this question coming from Stephen, the point is that if you come into an organization and you do not believe, as Stephen says, that it is racism, well, try getting a job as a Christian and go into an Islamic institution and say that you are not going to follow the rules. You cannot call it to be racism. I remember that years back in the UK, there was an issue that the churches had to deal with, and the churches had to deal with the issue of homosexuals. They clearly would say in their advertisement, and I saw this advert from Kensington Temple in the UK, where they indicate clearly their belief systems in terms of the values that they hold. That cannot be racism. If you do not believe in what I believe in, I cannot hang out with you. I'm sorry. So if you get into an organization and these things are black and white, okay, so you have a choice to make. You cannot say that it's racism. I'm sure you've heard about the news about, getting an office being open to promote homosexual activities in this country. Can you say that it's racism? It cannot. The laws of this country frowns at it. So you can go and do it in Australia. I hear the Australian embassy was there in the opening of that office and all that. They can do it in Australia, they can do it in the US and the UK, but they cannot do these things in Ghana here. Laws frown at them, and we will not accept it. So your interpretation of racism can be based on your own interpretation, but there are things that are generally accepted norms globally, and some of them will not bother on territorial conditions. Ghana is a country, and Ghana has a right to defend its rules in the manner that it chooses. And if you listen to the minister designate, when she faced Parliament, some of these things came up, and she referred to the fact that Ghana is a sovereign country. You cannot go to the US and do what you choose. You should not be allowed to do the same in Ghana here. And it starts at that level, and it will cascade into organizations. Okay? So if you believe in a certain lifestyle, homosexuality, for example, and you want to work in a Christian organization and you are not allowed, you say that it's racism. Well, I leave it to you, but I do not think that would be a fair way to conclude. And the very person who is saying this will not tolerate it anyway if it's your business. So these are the things. And what we are seeking to implant into your system is that you should be fair and balanced. Would you accept people into organizations when at the very core of what you stand for, they are coming to challenge it? Certainly not. Remember that organizations are governed by cultures. And the cultures, as long as they are lawful, you cannot say that it is racism. It's about fairness and balance, but it might be situated within morality. These are my views. So somebody says, Ambrose, please, is this tribalism and racism? I don't understand what the question is, but I guess you are getting the vibes as to what my views are on this matter. So much utilization is what we don't have anything. Be careful if you don't have anything you stand for. All things are acceptable to you. Be careful if you are that person. You don't go far when you accept everything. You must be known for something. You cannot have a walk through life. You must stand for something. You cannot be all things to all men. Now, employee motivation. We're going to talk about motivation because motivation is at the core of how people operate in the work setting. And most of the time, we like our workers to contribute to the goals of the organization in a manner that we expect them to do so that we get value out of them and obviously improve the bottom line. But you see, as I've already indicated, nothing just happens. Nothing happens. There's always a cause. And the effects are the conclusions or the outcomes of the thing that happens. So when we talk about motivation is about people. We want to understand why people behave in a particular way. This means that people have a choice in how they behave, but in bringing in motivation becomes important in a sense that we have to know what buttons to press to get the best out of people. What buttons to press to get the best out of people. And this is within the work setting. A study of motivation is concerned with why people behave in a particular way. Why people behave in a particular way. And as a manager, you might be interested in how people behave in a particular way. How do you ensure that the staff that you have are behaving in a way that will give value to the organization? That is the essence of motivation. Okay? It tells us something, that people can decide to behave in the way they want to behave. Now, how can we make people behave in a particular way? And this particular way, in respect of what we are talking about, is how we can get the best out of these people, of these persons. What do we need to do? What do we need to be aware of to get the best out of them? So that's the essence of studying motivation. Now, let's look at the definition of motivation. It is a force within individuals by which they achieve a goal in order to fulfill a need or expectation. So motivation is something that drives us. And why are we driven? We are driven because we have goals in mind. And why do we pursue these goals? We pursue these goals because we have a need or we have an expectation. What this is saying to us is that anytime you have something in mind that you want to achieve, it drives you, it energizes you to do something. And that's something eventually, when it's directed appropriately, you end up getting that need met or that expectation achieved. So let's situate it within your own setting. Why are you in class? Why are you in class? Why are we signed up to this work? Why are we signed up to this work? Okay, I'm getting the comments, the question that you are asking, because I'm doing the presentation, I will not be able to answer them. So you have to just pay attention to what we are discussing for now, and then later on you can send some of the charts and I will try and answer the ones that I'm able to. So why are you paying the price to be doing all the things you are doing? Your schedule has certainly changed because you are on this program. Well, I know why, because you have an expectation, you have a need of a certificate. Okay, nobody does anything for nothing. You have a need, you have an expectation. You believe that at the end of 2 years, you will get your certificate. MBA Human Resource Management, MBA Finance, MBA Marketing, MBA Accounting, Finance, and all these public admin and health services management. These are the certificates that individuals will get. And that is a need. And that is a need. That is why you are driven to be able to go through all this. You are driven to be paid the price that comes with that need being met. So when we situate within the work environment, what we are saying is that people also have needs and have expectations in the work environment. And therefore, as they work towards achievement of goals. They commit to these organizations' goals because ultimately they want that need and expectations met. The need for promotion, the need for acknowledgement and recognition, the need for having been paid for what they have done and contributions they've made. These are all needs in organizations. And we must be aware as managers that we need to direct individuals towards those goals that we seek with a view that their needs and expectations will be met. So the long and short of our motivation is that people are driven by needs or expectations, and that must be of interest to organizations. Now, the intensity with which people drive that aspiration or pursue that aspiration will give it reflects the importance to which we attach to that need or that expectation that we have. The seriousness we attach to what we are doing now in terms of the knowledge that we are gaining or we are seeking to gain is largely influenced by how we commit to this program that we are on. So the level of need that you have can influence how you attack the situation. But we also talk about intensity, direction. Direction means that we must move in a certain way. You can be motivated negatively. You can be motivated in a negative way. Our discussions so far, or as long as motivation is concerned, is how to move in the right direction that will help organizations achieve their goals and expectations met. So motivation accounts for an individual's intensity, direction, and persistence of effort towards attaining a goal. You must direct your efforts in the right direction. Okay? So if you are bent on getting your degree, which is a good thing, you must direct your efforts appropriately. You need to read your notes. You need to engage sometimes discussion with your colleagues and all that. There will be difficult moments, but you must persist and break through. When you are motivated, you don't give up. You are persistent. You are not the kind of person that will have to give up because of challenges. Motivated people look to the end of the goal. At the end of the day, we are going to achieve this, and therefore you are driven by that. And organizations are being encouraged to know that as we invest in individuals, as we seek their welfare, they are going to help us pursue the goals that we have set. And obviously, they also will benefit from it. So the issue of motivation is kind of multidimensional in the sense that there are benefits that do not only accrue to organization, but also benefits the person who is helping you achieve that feat. The difficulties that come, and somehow people who are motivated appear not to be motivated again because the organization benefits, but it does not reflect on the person who has contributed to that fortune. It's important that we are mindful of this so that as people apply themselves, they are properly rewarded. We'll be looking at some theories of motivation and how these can be worked out within the organizational setting. We will emphasize some key aspects of organizational practice that can help us manage the issue of motivation well. I want to go through the characteristics of motivation, and then I'll take some comments or questions from the class. The first point is that motivation is an individual phenomenon. What this means is that everyone is motivated differently. What will motivate you may not motivate someone else. So it's an individual phenomenon. We are all motivated differently. That is the first point I want you to note. And all the theories that we'll be talking about or going through, they acknowledge that we are all motivated differently. So it's an individual phenomenon. Number two, motivation is intentional. It's intentional. What this means is that motivation is under the worker's own control. It means that you have a choice to be motivated or not motivated. Anytime we say that somebody is not motivated, it's not true. It's a choice. It's a choice. It's a choice the person has made. You see? So motivation is intentional, means that we have decided to be motivated or not to be motivated. This is the reason why some of them may appear to you now that the person is not motivated, but the next moment, that person appears to be motivated. What has changed? It's a choice. Because the person was not motivated, in your view, because maybe the person thought that they were not going to get some benefit from the commitment they are supposed to show. But now it's come to them that they are going to be rewarded anyway. And therefore, as a result of that, this person's behavior changes and how the person comes across changes. So it's a choice that we make. We cannot say that one person is not motivated or somebody is not motivated. It's a choice. That person can decide to be motivated or not. So behaviors that are influenced by motivation are seen as choices of action. This is the point I'm making. That whatever you are seeing upon which you are drawing a conclusion that someone is not motivated is a choice the person has made. So we decide to be motivated or not motivated. Number two, motivation is multifaceted. It's multifaceted. It means that you have more than one factor when it comes to motivation. Okay? So look at it. It says that the two factors of greatest importance are what gets people activated and then the force of an individual to engage in a desired behavior. I want you to understand this. What is he saying to us is that anytime we talk about motivation, there are factors that come together to draw conclusions on whether one is motivated or not motivated. Okay, so that is the first point I want you to note. That anytime we talk about motivation, there are two key things. What gets people activated, what drives people, and then out of that, people engage in certain behaviors. So when you look at somebody just at the facial level, just observation, and you say that, oh, she's not motivated, just by observing the person, how the person is coming across, you draw that conclusion. The conclusion that you've just drawn is based on the behavior the person is putting out or the observations you are making. But I also want you to understand that whatever you see, the behaviors that you see, upon which you draw conclusions, they are not existing in isolation. There is something behind that behavior. That thing may not be seen. It may be within, but there is a factor, there is something. So behaviors do not come up just by on their own in a vacuum. The behaviors that we observe, upon which we pass judgment, is a reflection of what is happening within. See, how people come across and what they say and how they think is a reflection of how they think within. Okay? If somebody thinks that you can never give certain jobs to women and that all these good jobs must be reserved to men, it's a reflection of how the person thinks. Nothing happens by chance. How we communicate and how we come across is a reflection. So motivation is like that. We draw conclusions based on what is happening within. It's very important for managers to know. So that sometimes when you see your staff and appears not to be motivated, a bit down, there is something within. And as managers, I expect you to go behind the scenes by engaging the person. You do not look very happy. You do not look fine. What are the issues? Is there anything we can help? Whether we like it or not, the value that we get at work cannot be separated from what people feel within. The issue of conflict in the workplace, remember I said to you, has family connotations to it. So when people are not happy from the family, it will have impact on the work. Even though we say that we've come to work and we must work, we cannot separate the two because we are intertwined with how we feel within and how we come across. And behavior is like that. I want to look at the 4 points. It says that the purpose of motivational theories is to predict behavior. Motivation is not the behavior and it's not performance either, but concerns the internal and external forces which influence one's choice of action. Let me explain this. If you look at the fact that the purpose of motivational theories is to predict behavior, then the question is, what is the point if it's only to predict? But my response is that it's better to predict rightly than to predict wrongly. And by the way, there's enough research out there that tells us how to get people motivated. So we have knowledge. Even though we talk about prediction of behaviors, we have knowledge as to what to do to motivate people. So that's the first point I want to make on the 4th point. But then also, if you look at the point that says that motivation is not the behavior itself, and not performance either. What is it saying is that, just as I said at the point 3, whatever behavior you see somebody put out, that is not all about the motivation. When you think that somebody is outstanding in their performance, it's not only about the outcome that you are seeing upon which you are drawing and passing judgment on what the person has done. There are other internal and external factors that is influencing that kind of thing you are seeing. See? So it goes to reinforce the point I made, that what we see is not all about it. There is always something behind what we are seeing. And so the point here is that as a manager, anytime we think that people are motivated, we must also take interest in what is making this person so committed to the organization. What is making this person so committed? Why is that this person does not appear committed? What are the issues? These are the ways that we can establish the very thing that can help people contribute more to the success of the organization. As a manager, you will always have to deal with the issue of motivation. Why? Because people will have to be driven and to be motivated if your business will have to thrive. So it pays to understand people, how they are driven in terms of the value that they give to the organization. Because without motivation, organizations will not go very far and they will not achieve expected outcomes. I want to pause on all the things I've said on motivation from the previous slide to this one. And then if there's any question or comment, I'll be very happy to do this. But before then, there's a question here. What are the responsible implications? What are the possible implications of having people who are engaged in a romantic relationship or even spouses in the same organizations? What are the possible implications of having people who are engaged in a romantic relationship? Well, the question is not very clear, but you see, normally there are some organizations that by their policy, you are not allowed to actually, go out with somebody in the organization. And this means that when they find out that you are going out with somebody, I know that some organizations, I hear some banks are like that, you will not be able to sustain your job. I have an issue to do with that anyway, because you cannot legislate in that manner. But I guess that the issues there has to do with the fact that, people may collude. Yeah, maybe I think it's fair if we say that one should be at the Legon branch of let's say EcoBank, and the other should be at the Tema branch or Springfield branch. But to legislate in that manner, I think that that will not be fair in my view. The issue of people engaging in romantic relationships in the workplace, well, it's a choice that people will have to make. And obviously, we must be also aware of the implications of it. Whatever we do, we are at liberty to do that, but you must know that where your liberty, ends, somebody's right also begins, or whichever way you look at it. So the issue of spouses in the same organization, I personally do not have any problem that you will not be barred if you want to work in the University of Ghana, with your spouse. Nobody stops you from doing that. But I must say that some organizations, they do not allow that to happen. And for romantic, relationship in the workplace, well, it happens everywhere. And so it's all about responsibility and knowing what you are getting yourself into. That would be my response. Let's see if there's any other comments. Sorry, I meant tribalism or racism, but let's move on, Prof. Okay. Any more questions or comments from the class? I'm not getting in. I think that the last thing has. Yeah, so Andrew is asking members to get muted. Andrew, thanks very much. No, that's Edward. All right, so if you have any comments, please, on what I've said, can you quickly answer the address and then I will end the class. I don't want you to get to the next lecture late. Any comments on what I've said? Okay, Bismarck, please, you have the floor.
Well, please, can some observation you came at by
Can
some motivation be termed as bribe?
Why? Is it because you are motivated?
Since we have bribe being intentional, motivation being intentional, sorry.
Okay, well, if you say that it's intentional, yes, I guess you understood what I meant by saying that it's under your control. You can choose to be motivated or not. If you give, well, it depends. It's the intent, isn't it? So the intent behind what you give. If you are giving somebody something with a view of compromising a certain stand, then that will be bribery. But you see, I have assistants who work with me, and sometimes every now and then I'll say, oh, take this, for lunch and all that. And I'm not under any obligation to do that. It's just to acknowledge them in a way, okay, just show appreciation to the support that they give to my work. Okay, and in my mind, when I do that, I'm not thinking of bribing them at all. Is that working? I'm not supposed to do that. But it's also a way sometimes to motivate people. Sometimes you just have to be alert and to know that it doesn't hurt to support a little bit, just to make life much better for someone. And then it translates. The issue of motivation is just like it's a two-way affair. When you look at the people, they are likely to also commit to your organization. And so I will not say that motivating people with this example is bribery. It's about, if you really intend to bribe, then you know why you are giving that money or that kind of support. And in that case, yes, it's bribery. But if the idea is to encourage, but there's one organization that I advise, and every year I advise the organization to give something to the staff, something that will show appreciation to their contribution to the success of the organization. And a lot of them continue to work for this fair because they enjoy the work environment. They think that the organization thinks about them. They are not there. I don't believe they are there because there are no jobs. I believe they love what they are doing. That's why they do that. So we are not bribing them, but we are showing appreciation. And even though it's subtle in nature, it does motivate your life. Nanaya, I see your hand up.
Hello, Prof. Good morning.
Good morning.
Please, talking about motivation, suppose you are helping an organization to achieve it aim, but at the end of the day, your superiors think you are infringing on their right because it's a public sector organization. People want to eat from it, but you want the right thing to be done. So because of that, you are always seen as a threat, and people doesn't relate well with you because of your moral values. How do you deal with it? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nanaya. I think that these are problems that we see in a number of places, especially if you want to do the right thing. I would say that you should continue. You should not become like them, because I'm always very certain that these same people will say to somebody that if you want the work to be done properly, then you must look out for Nanaya. Okay, so when they are involved, they don't like you. But when it gets to the extent where they have set up their own businesses or they require somebody that can be trusted, they will look out for you. So my response is that you must be consistent, okay? Never lose guard because somebody is wanting you to behave in the way that they want you to be, which you know is not the right thing to do. And we are all old enough to see the right thing when we see it anyway. So I'll say that continue to do what you have to do. If you think that the only concern and issue that sometimes people are penalized, especially if they are your bosses when it comes to promotion and all that. But if you believe you have a case, you can escalate it. Okay? You don't allow people to have a field day because they are your bosses and they take you for a ride. Don't fight them necessarily, but go through the right channels and seek redress if you know that you are being penalized unfairly. This would be my response, Anaya. Okay. Somebody says...
okay, thank you, sir.
All right, you're welcome. My friend's wife had to resign when they were getting married because they both worked at Dartey-Baah. I see. She was the best worker at that time in her branch. It's unfortunate. I see. So it's well, I don't know. Certainly, I don't have all the facts But I do not believe that we cannot provide a better alternative to this way of doing banking, where I work in the same organization as my spouse, so one should resign. I do not think that is a fair way. But as I said, it will be good to know, hear the other side of the argument, to be able to make a firm, take a firm view on it. And somebody says, I think it is safe for MTN. Well, what about the organizations that are doing so well, but they do not practice the same? That's the question to ask. What about those organizations? Now that we have systems in place, I wonder how we can imagine that two people can link up and build the organization. I struggle to appreciate it. But as I said, I don't have all the facts, so I'll be tempered in my submission. But I certainly struggle with this viewpoint. It's not true with MTN, okay? So Gifty Kusia has straightened up. Gifty Kusia, thanks for that. So these are the comments that has come through. Any more questions before we draw the class, we draw the curtain for today? Another chart. Oh, okay. So Madeline, that's a nice way. Madeline is certainly becoming organizational behavior savvy. No fight at all. If I say they do and they say they do not, no problem. That's a good way to respond. Any more comments from the class before we bring the class to a close? All right. So on that note, I will want to bring the class to a close. Immediately after this, I will send these slides through so that you can have them and begin to go through. Because I don't think I've sent this yet. I'll just get it through to you so you can begin going through, and we'll continue from where we left off. So please remember that we went through the first 4 steps, okay? So we'll continue from there, God willing, next week when we meet. So on that note, we wish you well, and we'll see you next week when we see you.